Welcome back inside the Now Morning Show. This morning we're having a conversation about the Trinidad and Tobago energy sector with its development and progress. This morning we chat with the Honourable Stuart Young, the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries. Good morning to you, Mr.
Good morning. How are you all?
I am great. How are you doing this morning?
Not too bad. Not too bad.
Now, Minister, the last time we spoke about the Dragon Gas deal and all the developments that would have come with it, and we were looking very positive. Are things still looking positive, and what is the impact so far with that deal?
Things are very positive as far as I'm concerned, and I think objectively looking at it and the energy sector, we are in a very positive state. Now, when I say that, it doesn't mean at this stage things are great with our production. We're stable with our production, which is good, which is where we've worked hard to get it. But what I've been saying, and what is the truth, is from 2026, the end of 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, things are going to be going like this, just completely upwards. Because in energy, as I've been trying to explain and have conversations, it takes a while. So when you negotiate something today, it is going to take a while for that first gas, that first production to come. They have to get into the ground, they have to drill the wells, they have to bring the gas up, they have to build the infrastructure, tie it back, hopefully to existing infrastructure. So things take a while. So for example, with Dragon, we're looking at those time frames. What is interesting is all of the naysayers try to throw a lot of cold water on it, but hey, that is part of life, that is to be expected. What I wanted to start off with this morning is really explaining to the population, through you, how energy impacts everybody's life, because energy seems like this kind of high up there topic and this sort of thing.
I think that we don't have that clarity in terms of exactly how it's broken down for us, because when we hear about things like the Dragon Gas deal, we hear it splash all across the news and we see, we have this deal happening, so people think and they expect that they would see something happening very soon because of all the press coverage that happened.
Correct.
But break it down for us. Exactly.
But it's not only see something very soon, do we really understand how energy fits into our daily lives? And I've come to the realization maybe we don't, right?
No, we definitely don't.
Okay, let's start. Energy is the biggest driver of Trinidad and Tobago's economy. We are economy based on oil and gas. So that means all of the money, the majority of money, over 80% of our exports in Trinidad and Tobago are energy-based products, over 80%. Our GDP, the direct GDP, gross domestic product, is over 35% is energy. What that means literally, the hospitals, we know we have free healthcare in Trinidad and Tobago, is energy paying for that. Schools, our children going off to school this morning and it's free education, energy paying for that. Or teachers, or policemen, or army, or prison service, all of that, all of the public service. The government is the largest employer of persons in the whole economy. It is our energy revenue paying for that. So those are the direct effects of energy. When you go to the gas pump, and we put gas into our car, there is still a subsidy on the price of fuel.
I think we know that's the only one.
That's the only one, because I guess it's so directly correlated. Oil, gas, right? Okay, water, our water services are subsidized. It's over $1 billion, net to $2 billion a year. That's energy paying for that. And the last one I'll throw at you is electricity. We have some of the lowest electricity rates in the world. Again, that is directly related to our energy, because unlike many countries in the world, we are very sophisticated in how we make electricity. 99.9% is off our natural gas. All of that is subsidized. So that is how our direct lives are affected on a daily basis. It is the money from energy.
Does the change in oil prices directly affect us as well when it comes to that income that we're getting?
Excellent question. Change in oil prices directly affects us. If oil prices are high, we have more revenue. If prices are low, we have less revenue. Gas prices, that's a great segue into gas. Right now, one of the markers you look at, one of the global prices of gas we look at in Trinidad, every night is flashed across the screens in the newspapers, is something called Henry Hub, which is an American marker. That's what the Americans sell gas at. That's been down at $1.80. Today is up at $2.30. So $2.30 is better than $1.80. But what the government did is, when we came in, we recognized we weren't getting sufficient revenue for our gas. We negotiated. I led those negotiations. And now, for our gas, rather than $2.30, we get 1/3 out of Asia, something called Japanese Korean marker. We get 1/3 out of Europe, either TTF or NBP, which are European markers. So that's the price gas is being sold in Asia and Europe. And then the next third is tied to Brent, which is oil. So we've got now a basket of prices that have been giving us at high prices, meaning when Henry Hub is high, is giving us 20% more than Henry Hub, and at times we're getting 50% more. So right now, where you may be getting $2.30 for Henry Hub, we are getting more than that because of what the government did. So even though our production of gas, the amount we're making and producing, has been lower, we've managed to maintain some stability with our revenue because we've been able to get higher prices.
Okay. All right, I think that kind of breaks it down as to how we directly affected. But tell me, how is the government working with the energy companies, including the state company, of course, NGC, to increase the production? Because we're talking about having low production. We want to increase the production, increase the exploration, as often as we hear about in the media all the time as well. So how are we working with the state companies?
Well, as I said at the start, it takes a while. So even when you negotiate, you change policy, you do things today, it takes a while. One of the things I've been saying repeatedly, and it cannot be disputed, is during the period, unfortunately, of 2010 to 2015, no gas contracts. I see you smile, but it's the truth. And it's important we understand that. So you come in at a disadvantage. Because if you negotiate a contract today, it could take 3 to 5, sometimes even more years for that gas to come to market. So if you've had that whole period of nothing being done, then you come in 15, you're facing declines, which is what we were doing. When you look at the statistics, you were seeing declines from 2010 all the way down. I mean, our highest production of both, well, not oil, of gas was from about 2006, that period, 2008, and then it started going into decline. So what we're doing with NGC is we've taken a policy decision that NGC can't just be a pipeline company. So they can't just transport gas and take small plays. So every new deal that we've structured, Dragon, NGC has a play in that, meaning that they're part from the start, from the wellhead as we call it, when that gas comes, straight across the value chain. So they'll be there in the transport. When the gas reaches to Trinidad, some of it is for NGC, that they will then sell either into LNG or into the domestic market, which is ammonia, methanol, etc., the petchem market, petroleum chemicals. So that's one of the things we've done with NGC, making sure that they're shareholding in everything with all of the other stakeholders. For example, this afternoon, I'll be meeting with Woodside, which is a large Australian operator that we're hoping will develop our deep water, and that's to continue to negotiate for them to bring our deep water gas to market. All of the players, the Shells, the BPs, the EOGs, the Perencos, the Touchstone, Trinity, we meet with them on a regular basis, we work with them, we protect the people of Trinidad and Tobago. We're not giving things away, but we're working with them to find ways to increase that production.
And I'm curious, you mentioned, having to do these deals often. If we make a deal with somebody, if I make a deal with you and we say it's beneficial, then why do we keep having to renegotiate or find new deals?
Because I don't want to put all our eggs in one basket. It's quite simple. So you make a deal with BP today, that's for one project. I then want to move on and say, hey, one isn't good for us. So for example, with BP, we got something called SIP across the line. Last time the Prime Minister and myself were in London meeting with them in December of last year. They said, okay, they'll go ahead and develop SIP, which is a name they've given to a project that's within the shores of Trinidad and Tobago to bring gas. So that means in the future, I could see that, no pun intended, but that pipeline of gas coming from SIP. But I didn't stop there. Immediately I said, hey, we have a field called Coquina Manakin. Part is in Venezuela, part is in Trinidad, and that's BP is the operator on the Trinidad side. I said, let's get down to Venezuela and let's negotiate. So you'll also have Coquina Manakin. The Manakin side is in Venezuela. It's a third in Venezuela, 2/3 Coquina. No, sorry, Coquina is in Venezuela, Manakin is in Trinidad. Right? 2/3 in Trinidad, Manakin, and a third Coquina in Venezuela. We went down there, we started, and that's going well. Then Manatee with Shell, Manatee, Loran, that is a huge field. That's what we call 10 trillion cubic feet of gas. That is gas for years to come. In fact, when I just announced the reserves last week, you were seeing 11.5
trillion.
Trillion cubic feet that we know, what we used to call proven. It means it's immediately available. But you have this field, Loran, Manatee, that's 10 TCF, so that immediately doubles it. So
I heard that there was also over 55 TCF of exploration potential.
Correct. So you have these three brackets, right? It used to be called proven, probable, and possible. Right? So in proven, you have the 11.4, 11.5. Then you have a couple other categories that they've now broken up that used to be probable. And you're looking at, when you add those two, if I remember the numbers correctly, about 9 to 10 there again. But then as you say, there's the belief that's about 55 TCF still there available. But what you have to do is you have to get people to spend the money to go after it. They might drill a couple dry holes, or they might strike gas, not gold, right?
So what goes into this belief? Because I think people will have their doubts and they will say, well, yeah, they're just giving BP the chance to go on and spend money and dig and whatever the case may be. But what leads to this belief or this potential that we can say there might be more there?
Geologists. So if the Prime Minister was here, he would lead us on a whole conversation. His eyes will light up as he would explain it. So what they do, and I've had to learn very quickly, is you have things like seismic, right? So they shoot seismic into the ground. Now they've redeveloped the seismic. They can take old seismic and uplift it and get better assumptions of where gas. And literally what they do is they look at a chart and you could see, depending on the colors and how dark it is, etc. And you say, okay, it looks as though there's something there. But then it's more sophisticated than that. The structures, so these rock structures, and they come all the way from South America, straight up. Now, I can't remember the names of the different plains and stuff like that, right? And it comes straight up. So they look at that, they know how these structures are, the geologists, etc. And they say, right, so okay, so we're seeing some faults there, and inside there it looks like they're hydrocarbons. So that's why you have an independent audit. So this is not the government doing this. What it is an independent firm. We use the Goya and McNaughton this time. It used to be Ryder Scott. They looked at all of these things. They gathered information from all of the information available, all of the upstreamers, the Ministry of Energy, etc. And they came up with those numbers.
Okay. All right, interesting. So I recently also saw that Cabinet approved TNT's commitment to renewables, and it's going to be driven by NGC. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So when you look at it globally, and I mean, we're seeing it yesterday, my colleague, the Minister of Public Utilities, was talking to the country about what is a direct effect of global climate change. We're having hotter weather, warmer weather all over the world. So we're facing a shortage this year of rainfall that affects our water supply. We have a responsibility in Trinidad and Tobago to do our part, however minimal it may be, in global climate change. The truth is, when they talk about per capita, they like to talk about Trinidad and Tobago is high up in emissions, etc. That's rubbish. We could shut off everything, every light, every car, everything, every plant in Trinidad. And the truth is, the amount of our cumulative emissions is not going to make any difference. I've been talking globally for the last 2 years. It's all about coal. People who are using coal are the ones who are polluting the world. And then you have some of the larger countries, the developed countries, the wealthy countries, who are the main polluters. So our part is, we've given a commitment, we will reduce emissions. So one of the things we're looking at is our power generation. I said we use gas. I prefer to sell the gas because, of course, when we put that gas into electricity generation, it's subsidized. TNTech owes NGC billions of dollars not paying for the gas, etc. Whereas if we sell that to LNG, ammonia, methanol, we get revenue for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So let's kill two birds with one stone. Let us do our commitments to global climate change by going renewables. We're currently constructing the largest solar electricity generation plant in the Caribbean, in CARICOM, down in Brechin Castle, along with BP, Shell, and NGC. Again, that's a good example. We took a 30% play in that, and we're now going with wind as well. Because if you think about it, from the Atlantic Sea, all the way from Africa to our east coast, there is nothing blocking that whole Atlantic Sea. So we have a lot of wind.
Sahara dust.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's get some wind turbines going. Let's put that into our grid. It could also help us. I have a vision for future energy production because people are moving away from the use of oil and gas. They're always going to use gas. But again, there's something called green hydrogen that we have all of the infrastructure ready in Trinidad for. In terms of ammonia is the best way to transport it. Methanol can use it. What you do is you take fully renewable electricity, generated electricity from sun, solar, water, etc. You put it into an electrolyzer, H2O, which is water. It takes out the oxygen, the O, leaves the hydrogen. The hydrogen then goes into the production of the ammonia, the methanol, etc. So I have a vision, and then the cabinet will accept that vision. As the future moves away from natural gas into green hydrogen, we are perfectly poised to get a global play in that.
Minister, before we take our first break, because we're gonna have, this is going to be a lengthy conversation.
No problem.
But I'm really curious as to, are there any plans in this vision to have the people of Trinidad and Tobago contribute to this climate change protection, this renewable energy as well? Because, I mean, we have I know other countries in the region that have encouraged people to add to the grid with their solar power. Do we have any plans like that?
The answer is yes. But when you hear those conversations and you now get into, okay, let's implement it, that's when you realize stabilize. It's not as simple as they say. So some of those countries, and I won't call the names, what they're looking at is they have very high energy production costs, electricity production costs.
Right.
And they're using some of the worst types of fuels. So they're literally using diesel into turbines to produce electricity, which are some of the worst emitters of emissions. And they're using old plants. So they're looking to upgrade that now. But the cost of solar and etc. So they tell everybody, okay, put solar panels on your homes, etc., and we'll feed it, what they say, into the grid.
Right.
So when you're not home during the day, you're here interviewing me, and the sun beating down on your roof.
Yeah, using that power.
Exactly. And you, because no one home, using the electricity will send it into the grid. Sounds like a great concept and formula until you now have to implement it. Everybody sending electricity is going to be coming in at literally at different waves, right? I'm using layman's language here. So it's coming in at different points, etc., different generations, etc. That will completely destroy your grid, because what it needs to do is it all needs to feed in safely into substations built all over the place. Those substations will then stabilize it and then send it out onto the national grid in a stable way. So that's a huge infrastructural cost.
But don't we already have substations?
We have substations, but remember, those are substations that are basically feeding in from the major plants, TGU in South, PowerGen in Pinal, PowerGen in Point Lisas, feeding it into these substations and then stabilize it and send it out onto the grid. If you now have hundreds, thousands of homes, each sending at different points and different variances in, you need smaller substations closer to that, because you can't just all shoot that in to the existing substations.
Okay.
So when you look at it and you start to break it down, the people who have been promoting are saying it is going to take them a while to get there, and it's not as simple as that. Then I talk to others and they're saying, okay, well, let's put battery storage, which of course makes sense.
Right.
So during the day when there's all this sunshine and we produce this electricity, let's store it, so at night time now we could use that same solar in. But it is astronomical, the cost of this. And then what we also don't understand is the Americans, they recently, in the last 2 years, passed a piece of legislation called the IRA, which basically was to do that in the United States, which is to promote the use of renewables, etc. So what that did is sucked the global resources into the US, because you're getting great incentives there, etc. So it's pushed the cost up. The same thing with the Russia-Ukraine war, which directly affected our solar project, because of course, when that happened and Europe had to come off of the dependency of Russian gas, they rushed to start as many renewable projects all over as they could, drove the price up. We are at the stages of finalizing. So where something may have cost down here, and now you reach the table to negotiate is up here. So it's all of these things, but it gives you a good idea of how integrated globally we are, that we don't drive prices, we're too small, we accept prices, but we definitely affected by it.
All right, Minister, let's take a pen in there for now. We take a quick break and we come back and continue the conversation. We continue talking energy right here in the Now Morning Show. Stay tuned. Welcome back. This morning we're chatting with the Honorable Stuart Young, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, and we're talking the energy sector. Minister Young, you would have mentioned in the last segment, the 30% stake that we have in the solar planning and what's not happening, and then we also have different things that we've been getting pieces of, and you say you're not putting all the eggs in one basket, right? But I want to understand what steps the government is actually taking to ensure that we get fair value for the natural gas resources, especially when we talk about LNG production.
Okay, great question. You all may remember in 2018 we had something called the Energy Spotlight, right? Because when we came in 2015 and we did an assessment, we found a report done by some people called Porton and Partners, did an assessment of our energy gas sector in Trinidad. And they said, look, we believe there's leakage of value for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. In other words, you're not getting the amount of money you should for your gas and LNG and other things, ammonia, methanol, but basically LNG. So we had a gas, the energy spotlight on energy. The Prime Minister, the then Minister of Energy, Franklin Kahn, went and they told the population this. And immediately the Prime Minister spoke to the large producers, the BPs and Shells, who are also the major shareholders in LNG in Trinidad, and said, listen, you have your shareholders that you have to get value for. I have my shareholders, the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I want to renegotiate. At the time, people screamed bloody murder. They said, how you could do that, you're going to run investors from the country, everybody's going to pull up, they're going to leave, etc. The complete opposite happened. We then spent, and I was given the task to lead the team for 5 years, sitting down with these people, the most sophisticated people you'll meet in the world, because they have the money, they have the resources to bring in the best,
whatever
the brightest, whatever they need, right? So as you move in one piece there, they're already thinking down here. And I kept telling our team, look, we have to be that as well. This is like a war room. So if we move this, what does this affect, etc. 5 years later, we got it done. But even before that, we got them to agree exactly what I explained a short while ago, this basket price for gas. So don't link us to a lower in the sea, Henry Hub. We want some in Asia, we want some in Europe, and then we're going to put some on oil. So if the price of gas goes down, but the price of oil is high, at least that pulls up the value. That is an immediate. So they agreed to that. We've been applying that. That plus some other negotiations we did up to September of last year. I think we had earned about $17 billion in revenue that we would not have gotten for our gas if we didn't do those negotiations. So that immediately led to better value. We then also, 5 years took us to restructure Atlantic LNG. That's what I was coming to. Completed that in December of last year. It has never been done anywhere in the world. No LNG facility where government has had a take has ever been renegotiated, restructured. We've done that. NGC, for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, are now getting a higher stake. If you did it across the board, we should have gotten about 5.4% shareholding. We got 10% at no cost to Trinidad and Tobago. We're getting better prices of gas. We're getting a more competitive LNG complex in that other people could bring their gas into Atlantic and put it through what we call a tolling arrangement, taking it across, bring your gas, produce your LNG, take your LNG, or negotiate the prices, etc. So we restructure that. That is going to lead for much better value for Trinidad and Tobago. Also, every production sharing contract, E&P license, etc., we've been renegotiating new terms on. So like the Manatee project that Shell are doing, which is going to be the largest project in decades in Trinidad, we got better terms for that. We restructured certain things. We will use the minister's share of gas. So we've been doing a lot in those areas to make sure we get better value for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, in addition to insisting that NGC is also an equity stakeholder in all of these projects.
When you use numbers like 5% and then people think that it's a very, very small number in terms of saying, these people are coming here, they're taking our natural resources and they're processing it as the case may be, and they're making the lion's share.
Correct.
How do you respond to people saying that?
Understand that 10% comes with a 10% liability as well. So if you take more than that, can you carry the billions of dollars in potential costs? So for example, one of the things at Atlantic LNG right now, until the big projects, the Dragon and the Manatee and Deepwater start to come in, there's something called capacity. So there's a space where there is not enough gas to produce as much as you could get.
Right.
So when you're at 75%, say, of capacity, so you have 75% of the gas being utilized and there's 25% capacity, you have to pay for that capacity. You have to carry the cost of that. So can we in Trinidad and Tobago, where we're not producing upstream gas and we don't have investments in other countries the way BPs and Shells do, can we carry that cost until the day that comes in that is 100% gas coming in? Also, you have to turn up at the door with your 10% of gas. Right? So there are commitments associated with these percentages.
Okay.
But what it does is it gives us more value. And then how we, the government, have decided, okay, it's not only about shareholding, how we would extract, as you say, that value for our gas, is by increasing the price formula. So when you take up that molecule, we also added royalty to gas. So every molecule of gas that comes out, you have to pay 12.5%. To the government.
Who has to pay that?
The upstreamer, the person producing the gas.
They pay that to the government?
They have to pay that to the government, correct. So we introduced that in around the 2018, 2019 period. So we've been doing those things, but you have to balance it as well, because what people also don't understand is for a BP, a Shell, a EOG, a Woodside, they have other countries and other jurisdictions they're dealing with.
Yeah.
So they could easily say, you know what, park that investment in Trinidad. I ain't dealing with Young right now, no? He wake up and he had drink his coffee this morning. I will go and deal with X in another country. And they have a lot of resources because you're dealing on a global scale.
Yeah.
You're looking at like a country like Qatar, where there's huge amounts of gas volume. The United States now is the largest exporter of oil and gas in the world. That happened overnight in the last 4 years. So these are the types of things you're dealing with. So you look for strategic partnerships. Boom, Venezuela.
Great. I'm happy you went to Venezuela because there's been a lot of press coverage on the natural gas from Venezuela to Trinidad and Tobago.
Correct.
And we've been seeing people referencing the OFAC license.
OFAC, correct.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about the agreement there and the license, how it
Thank
works,
you.
and how does it benefit us? Will it benefit us?
Absolutely. So again, this is historic. Nobody has ever done this. So 2 things we achieved there, and understand this is in the world of global geopolitics.
Right.
We are a small little island, 1.4 million people between Venezuela, 33 million, United States, 330 million. And we stuck there in the middle, needing this natural resource of gas from Venezuela. We went to Washington very quietly, Prime Minister and myself, over a series of months. We met literally everybody we could. Both the Democrats, the Republicans, the White House, the State Department, the Energy Department, the Agriculture Department. I went there on so many trips. Some of them the Prime Minister accompanied because, of course, that lifts the profile. And we basically told them, look, Trinidad and Tobago is an ally. We can produce gas, and this Russia-Ukraine war has shown you need a diversified portfolio of gas from around the world. We have all of these plants in Trinidad that could produce ammonia, methanol, LNG. Immediately, there's gas next door. We'll build a pipeline and bring it. Persuaded the United States. Finally, we met with President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris a number of times. Got the green light for them, which is the OFAC license. People don't realize there's only one other entity that got that type of license, a specific license that we got, which was Chevron, because Chevron have billions invested in Venezuela. It's an American corporation. Their license was between 3 to 6 months, and they keep rolling it. Trinidad and Tobago got a 2-year license. Initially, you couldn't pay in cash. Everybody said, oh, it's not going to work, Maduro wouldn't accept. Okay, so we quietly continued our work whilst negotiating with Venezuela. In October of 2023, we got an amended license that goes till end of October 2025 from OFAC out the United States that allows us to pay in cash. December of last year, and people shouldn't lose sight of this, we now have an exploration and production license from the government of Venezuela for 30 years for the Dragon field. So that is now our field. It is literally ours. The same way when we give an exploration and production license to a BP, a Shell, a EOG in Trinidad and Tobago, that's now their area for exploration. We have that.
You mentioned just now that it takes some time to be able to get into the Dragon, but is 30 years enough?
30 years is more than enough. If all could go well, that gas, so right now what we're doing is we're getting a ship along with Shell to go in to survey the Dragon field to see where we're going to put down the wells. It's 18 kilometers of pipeline. Why you need 30 years, this is for the exploration and production, because once that gas starts to flow, it's going to flow for beyond 30 years. What people are talking about is an extension of the OFAC license beyond October. And let me use this opportunity now. There was a false story produced unfortunately by an author for Reuters saying that Shell went and asked the Americans for a 15-year extension of the license, otherwise they're not doing Dragon. Completely false. The OFAC license is in the government of Trinidad and Tobago's name. We are the ones who applied for it. We are the ones who were granted it. So Shell are not the ones to ask for any extension there, and they did not do any such thing. We, of course, have been speaking to the White House, to the State Department, to all of the players in Washington about an extension and how do we go ahead with this thing, because it's not going to be a 2-year deal. It's not going to end in October with this dead drop date. To produce a 30 years and to continue.
So, Minister, we don't have much time left. You're just about a minute and a half. But in closing, I want to know what is your view on the longevity of TNT in the energy sector. We're talking about diversifying. We talk about doing all these other things. But we also see what's happening in Guyana. We see what's happening in Suriname. Do we have synergies between the countries, or is it competition? What is the status there?
There are synergies. That's another thing we've been promoting. First of all, I'd like to say Trinidad and Tobago's energy sector, there is a lot of positive. There's a lot of hopefulness. There are a lot of things structured well. As I say, that period 26, 27, 28, 29, 30 is just going to skyrocket with the production, etc., which I'm really looking forward to as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. What we have to decide is who's going to manage that. To come back to your conversation, we have signed with Suriname, for example, an MOU, and the technical teams are working at looking at the feasibility. If they have a lot of gas resources in Suriname, can that be brought to Trinidad? Because Trinidad can immediately monetize it. Whereas if you have to build new plants, you have to build infrastructure, you have investment. But not only that, as a government, you have to give incentives, moratoriums on tax, etc. So how do you get that money for your people's natural resources of gas? Our proposition is Trinidad can monetize it for you immediately. Put your gas in, ammonia, methanol, LNG, here's your check. So that is going on. Same thing with Guyana. We've been in conversations with Guyana. We have a good working relationship with Guyana. Suriname has not begun to produce its resources as yet. So people talk about Suriname, etc. We're working with them. We will help them. Anything I could do. I mean, I met with Petronas a few months ago, encouraged them in Suriname. That's going well. Same thing with Guyana. I don't see it as a competition at all because the world needs resources. The world needs these things. Trinidad and Tobago, in my view, is perfectly poised. We have a lot of advantages. We have the infrastructure. People don't realize even our shipping, everything is built there. So you literally pull up with a tanker, you take the LNG, and you go to the global markets. So we're well poised. Trinidad and Tobago things, we have a bright future ahead of us. Who's going to manage that future? That's one of the things you need to think about. Who has done it successfully, who has the vision, who has the competence, who has the capability. You're smiling.
Yes,
because you know what the answer is.
I know the road you're going down here.
You know what the answer is.
And on that note, I would like to thank you very much for joining us this morning and sharing this information, giving us these updates and clarifying a lot of things. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And do enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we take a quick break and come back with some entertainment. And now, of course, we say thank you very much to the Honorable Stuart Young, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries. We take that break and come back with more. Stay tuned.